if you don't give them the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them, how are they going to learn?
Why is education system not giving that freedom of learning to students, and why is it being made so constrained?
What has happened in the education academia here, they're starting to treat their college environment as a school. And they've really curtailed it.
What made you get into architecture?
There was an architecture festival in the college there.
College.
It was amazing, yeah. And all the college students there were having such good fun. Huh? Then I said, okay, boss, yahi chahiye.
So what made you come back to India?
Nothing worked out the way we thought when we came to Bangalore. But Bangalore was the place because you had the same Silicon Valley type ethos. Right? Like little bit.
You did SPA, which is already the top level of schools for architecture in India.
You don't know that when you're studying there, actually.
Yeah,
I still don't feel that. So although you're saying from an outside perspective, when you're studying, actually you feel like, kya yaar, kachra hai.
Is it right to say that theory helps in evolving the design?
Coming up with the design and making sure that the design is built in a particular budget, in a particular process, theory helps.
How did you choose history?
I think SP had such great...
Theory gives you tools to look at your own work and history itself. Let's say a 6th standard kid is listening to us, and you have to explain the same funda to that guy. Do you have an example for him?
Yeah, let's say...
Welcome to this episode of Creative Spark Plug. Creative Spark Plug is a black book of creative journeys. We talk with creative people and record their journeys in their creative pursuits. We believe it'll bring insight and light up the path of people who are looking for creative careers or ways to maneuver through life. Today we are talking with architect N.S. Vijay. I categorically mentioned NS because I just learned what it meant and the fact that it would give away a lot of details if I just mentioned the name. So, Architect Vijay, what does NS stand for? Can you spell that out for us?
Right. So it's like many cultures, I think the name reflects an address, a location. So it can tell you something about the person. So my name is Vijay Sambasivam Narnapati. And my first name, of course, is Vijay, and you should call me Vijay. Sambasivam is my father's name, so one generation above. And Narnapati is my village. I don't know where it is, but somewhere, it must be somewhere in Andhra. And Narnapati is the ancestral village, which, so now it's common to all my cousins, my uncles, etc. So it's a location, it's like a geolocation. And actually, when I started, my name was N.S. Vijay. And ICSE expanded it. In fact, Sambasivam was not there. It was Sachitanandam. My father's name was there. Because my father decided when he's going to name me, he will have his father's name there in memory. And I think in the US, I found that this culture is there in South American, Spanish, not French and all, not Anglo. But like here also, if you go to some of the let's say Nepali, I think it's a good idea. So I'm happy it got expanded. But in college, people used to call me Samba. Because see, there's a last
I would have asked.
Sharma. Sharma means Sharma, they'll call you. No, so it's okay. Then I stopped explaining to people this whole lengthy thing. I said, okay, ठीक है, Samba hai, Vijay. So Samba became Sambar. South से Sambar हो गया.
But in North, they would have said, Ario Samba.
वो भी है. People have versions of everything. Yeah. So.
Vijay has his own architecture practice and he's also an academic. In fact, my co-host Rajesh first knew him as a teacher and now
exactly
he thinks...
in the same, exactly like this. No change one bit.
Right. So we are going to explore or dig into these two sides of him, a practicing architect and an academic. I mean, you can Google his name to see all the list of awards that he has won. We will put it up on our sharing as well. But having said that, Rajesh, would you like to inquire into, first tell us, how was your experience of meeting him and how has it changed in the last 20,
I
more
told
than 20
sir
years.
was exactly like this. Not one bit, not 1 mm change here and there.
I think I had a ponytail.
Yeah, you had a ponytail back then. That's one common this thing that like through college, lot of my facial hair changed, the hair went long, got
You have a
cut,
ponytail
yeah,
now.
yeah.
beard came. So sir had long hair but no beard.
Yeah, no beard. I had a goatee after that.
Yes.
The next person was like,
Yes.
so you keep,
So I remember once I wore an orange pant. And red color pants and all these. I got it from Fab India. So what made you get into architecture?
I don't know, just luck, pure luck. Because what happened was, I was like a gully boy. Up to my 10th, I don't remember really studying anything. Like, I think most of us, who cares? They're childhood, no? And then when it came to 11, they said, okay, boss, you have to do something. And I don't know, I told my dad, engineering, South Indian Brahmin family pushes you to these kind of things. So I took up engineering initially and said, boss, this is mera bas ka nahi hai. I can't handle it. So what can I do? So my dad said, oh, our house was designed by one architect. Maybe you can do architecture. I said, okay, fine. So then it so happened that we had moved to Hyderabad, and I heard that there was an architecture festival in the college. There. So I said, okay, theek hai. What is architecture festival? What will it? So I went there, and it was amazing, yeah. And all the college students there were having such good fun. Huh? Then I said, okay, boss, yahi chahiye. I want this. But there was some amount of understanding of what building was. And I don't know whether I had an innate sense of sort of history. I'm a history buff. I love history. So even from that age, I used to read a lot. Not necessarily history books, all kinds of books. And so history and architecture remain connected integrally for me even now. And I can't say history of architecture I teach. I teach history, and architecture appears in that. So like that, I think there was a connection, and slowly I wrote the entrance exam, and eventually the interesting story how I got to where I studied architecture. At that time, I think if you remember, there was this Punjab, Hangama, terrorism and all, and there was
This is a Golden Temple Hangama.
Huh?
The Golden Temple Hangama.
No, just after that, there was also bombing happening in Delhi, and so my friend and I decided, he said, I'm interested in architecture. Let's go to Delhi and give the exam. That's the best college. I said, wow, yeah, let's go. And we took the train. And my parents said, don't go, bombing, shombing, we don't know, new city. And you're in the south, small city, yeah. Delhi is big city. So from Hyderabad, we took a train and went, and we gave the exam. I got through the exam, no preparation, nothing. We just went and gave the exam. I got through, he didn't get through. And we came back, and we didn't know, obviously. After a few days, we got to know, and I felt very embarrassed. His father was a little upset, ki kya hai, why? But I think now, Anand, my friend, is a documentary filmmaker in New York. He's made some fabulous documentaries. I'm really jealous of him, and I wish I was in his place, and he had gone into architecture. I had gone sometime, no? Well, but I'm still happy. It's okay. Good life. So that's how I got into architecture, and I went to do my B.Arch at SPA Delhi. And SPA was a fantastic place. I mean, the same fun continued there, and we had a great time. I have a lot of stories to tell. It's the best time I've had in my life. In 5 years, the things that you get to do in architecture college like SPA, I don't think you can do that anywhere. And then after that, journey began. A lot of things happened.
You went on to do your master's in history and theory in architecture.
Yeah.
So what exactly is that course about, and how was it? Like, you're already in the best college of the country for architecture, and from there you went to US and did the master's. Was it immediately after you finished SPA, or did you work for some time? And
Yeah, I'm also curious about that.
Nah, it's not always a simple journey. It's always it's a discovery. You don't know what is coming next, and that's the beauty of life. I think so. When I finished college, I took up a job with a wonderful architectural practice called Vasant and Revati Kamath. But then after 1 month, I heard that Gautam Bhatia, who's another architect, he was looking for somebody to do editing for his magazine.
Uh-huh.
So I immediately quit and joined there. And I know Repti was very pissed, but I said, please, apologies. I want to do this really. And I went and joined him for a magazine, a quarterly magazine on architecture. At that time, there was no digital media.
Gautam Bhatia is the architect who written that book, some butter chicken.
Yeah. Gautam has also done some wonderful buildings, but
Mhm.
he's also more known for his books. First book that he wrote was on Laurie Baker,
Mhm.
and it's a very nice book. And then he had this knack of, sort of caricaturing stuff and communicating through that. So Punjabi Baroque, then there's Silent Spaces. These are like, it's really a tongue-in-cheek sort of note. I think you should read them. They're fun to read. And this magazine, I wasn't part of those books, but there were some of the sketches that I did, drawings, actually, topo drawings type, which were in the book, and I'm acknowledged in the book. And he's my guru. A lot of things he doesn't teach. Nobody, I mean, you just learn, right? So a small office in a garage, and we were 5-6 of us, and so I joined that for him for the magazine, and we made about 6 issues. I had to write to all the different people like Prem Chandavarkar, Sanjay Mohe, I think not, maybe Sanjay Mohe, and then a lot of people around the country, Edgar de Mello, Bangalore Architects, but all over the country to please write. And then it would come, and that time we had one guy from NID who would sit there, and he had his own office. Sometimes he'll give us the graphics. And Gautam was very interested in typography. And so I learned that also, how cut patch everything into a graphic page with the images. And so the content was developed for at least 3 of those. And Media Transasia still publishes something called A plus D and several magazines. They were the publishers, and they happened to want a lot more glossy magazine, and Gautam didn't want to do that. He said, okay, a lot of pictures are there, but you have to have writing critical content. What's the point? Architects are not going to enjoy. It's not like a interiors magazine. I'm sure interiors magazines can be critical too, but they tend to be more glossy. So that fell through. And then I worked in the office for a couple of years, after which parallelly, thing is, we as architects, ad world, any professional is going to make a small sum of money, right? I made about 2,500 rupees a month. My rent, I want to live near Dimple and near the office. And so my rent was 2,100. So I had only 400 rupees. So you can't survive. So what do? You have to really do your own work. So we would find work. Amitabh and I both used to work in Gautam's office, and we decided, chalo kuch kaam karte hain. Then we took up some project. His girlfriend's colleague, Sunita's colleague had some connections, and we did one project, and thoda paisa aa gaya. Then we said, why not start something? But Amitabh went off to the US to do his master's. Dimple, me, and Anamika, 3 of us started an office, and it was called Dialect Architecture.
This is Delhi.
Delhi. Yeah, Delhi. So that became our first baby. And we did some very interesting work and made some money, actually. So Delhi has this Pragati Maidan where a lot of exhibitions happen. So there's quick money. Within a month, you can do some exhibitions and you can make money. So we made a couple of things, made some money. And then we got one office interior project. And I think goofballs we are. I mean, architects, no? Can't think of interiors properly. So we did, like, for partitions, we did walls. Can you believe exposed brick walls? They're so permanent, you can't move them. I think that really became a fair. I mean, it was nice to look at, but it was a disaster from the client's side. So I think he kicked us out, finally didn't pay us and all. But somewhere I felt that this practice, before I get entrenched into practice, I want to go and study a little bit more about history and theory. So what happens in SPA is, it's a very hands-on program. It has a lot of history. In fact, we were taught by Satish Grover, a couple of other people, wonderful people to learn history and theory from. But it still did not, the quantum of history that you really touched upon and theory you touched upon was much lesser. I don't know how to explain. When you understand a building, just by experience, it's one thing. You live in the building, you experience the building. That's lived experience, right? That cannot be replaced by theorizing, of course. And so what is theory then? The theory is your sort of making sense of the building. Why it was made this way. What were the constraints it had to operate in? Where did the idea emerge? How did it get rationalized? And what is the outcome? Is the outcome matching the intent, design intent? And finally, is the experience good? So these are, let's say, some of the aspects you can explore theory, and it's very relevant, right? So tomorrow, if you want to do big auditorium or a school, you can't just make it out of thin air. You're going to rely on what you've learned, what you've seen, what you observed, and also some more research that you do. So that I felt was lacking, and I didn't feel it was complete enough. So I applied to a few schools, and see, that time, applications were expensive in the US. US seems like the right place to go. I looked for history theory programs, and I applied to three places. Only 3 applications. I got in 2. One of them offered me full scholarship, other one offered me only half, and I said to get it. So I went to a college called College of Design, Architecture, Art and Planning in the University of Cincinnati. People think it's like a joke. That name sounds very funny, Cincinnati, but actually it's a German name. It's in Ohio. I also had gotten into Columbia, but it was a very history preservation type practice. So I said, no, Baba, let me go and be free. Kuch padna hai to freely padho. And the beauty of the master's program is that it allows you to explore whatever you want. There are some core courses, and it's wonderful. So there's philosophy, there's theory, there's also teaching methods, research methods, which I deeply enjoyed, and I did very well. I mean, I think in SPA, I never had the privilege of coming first. Once, third semester, by fluke, my teacher said, you make a collage in the early part. Make a collage of the concept. I made a collage. I didn't know what I put, but teacher liked it so much. For only time I've ever had the chance of coming first. But maybe there was some kind of deep interest and liking to the subject of history and theory of architecture. I think I did without having to think of coming first. I mean, it's not I don't care. But I did very well. So that really was very fulfilling. But then after that, I looked for a job. Jobs, just a mundane job. In Cincinnati, I worked in a place. And the first thing that I had to do was to a horrible ballroom interior. I was devastated. I thought, shit, all this history.
Why horrible?
Theory, you get what job you get.
Right. But why did you say horrible?
Because, see, the ballroom interior is a fake stage set facade. I mean, you can say, from now I can say that, oh, it's fun, it could have been fun. But at that time when we came, there was no purism of architecture. You learned the philosophy of modernism, and then you tried to connect it to the social practices. Here I have to design a ballroom, that too, only the facade. But at the same time, just to time pass, I will build some sculptures on my table, and everybody would pass by, and they say, what the hell are you doing? I said, boss, I'm not enjoying this, so I'm doing something I'm enjoying. But they all understood. So I think that was the first job I got. And then once Dimple finished the course, we said, this is it. We have to get out of Cincinnati. It's a wonderful place to study, but it's no place to work.
Hey, I lost connect. Dimple was in Delhi. You left her behind in Delhi and went to Cincinnati.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that story a little bit. I mean, little guilt. Okay. The story is that once I decided to go, there were 3 partners in dialect architecture: Dimple, me, and Anamika. Anamika decided to go for her master's in sustainable design, and she went to the US, studied at USC in LA. And I decided I want to also study, and I said, okay, I'll also go. And the following year, I'll come and we'll do something. And Dimple will she's also interested in the subject. But I abandoned her Anamika, and I abandoned her to carry off the rest of the projects. I think that was a terrible time for her. And I'm still feeling guilty, but she had to close off all the pending projects. And then we got engaged before I went. And then next day I had to come back, get married. And after marriage, both of us went. Penniless students in the US. It's a wonderful story, actually. But penniless students living outside the campus. Luckily, I had a full scholarship, and Dimple had a TA. And she got a job at the university architect's office, and I got an extra job. We decided, okay, we want to travel. Let's make some more money. And the US is a place where it allows you to do so many things. Yeah, I mean, now I don't know, but it's a wonderful place, I must say. So we found a job at the radiology department. 4 o'clock in the morning, we had to get up and go. Imagine me doing all that lazy bastard. So it was. So that happened in very temperature you can't imagine. -9 degrees. It says with wind chill factor -19. The balls are freezing. And then you have to walk, like, you don't have any vehicles. You're post student here. And you have to walk that 1.5, 2 kilometers in freezing chill at 4 a.m. You reach radiology में कुछ नहीं करना वहाँ पे. ये यहाँ से लेके वहाँ पे stack करना है. But that paid us enough. So we used that to travel. So Dimple staggered 1 year with me. So it's a 2-year course. There's masters in science. And she finished 1 year later than me. So that 1 year I worked there in Cincinnati.
She did a master's after you.
Yeah, 1 year after.
Yeah.
1 year overlap. 2 years
Correct.
course.
Correct.
He went first, finished 1 year, came back, got married, went back, both of them. So she did one. When he was in second year, she was in first year.
Huh.
When he finished, he took a
Yeah,
job
of course.
and she finished the second year.
Yeah,
Second.
yeah.
So you were there for exactly 3 years.
3 years. Huh?
And once she finished the course, you packed up.
Yeah, we packed up. By that time, initially, one of our cousins was in, I think he was in Detroit, Akron karke ek jagah. So he gave us one Dakota Nissan car, and that was great. I mean, we just drove everywhere until that bonnet, piche ka bonnet gir gaya. Then that also we could fix. No, like India, no, we know where to fix it. So we took it to the poorer area. There was one guy who welded it back. Shock absorber shot through it was so rusted.
Oh.
Shot through the हम लोग बोलेंगे dicky, but the trunk. And so we got it fixed and we ran it. Then we said, okay, boss, now I'm working. Let me get a second-hand car. So we got ourselves a Mazda 323, chota, like this small car. And then after finishing, we had this car. We put everything that we wanted in this. Rest of it, kept it outside in the garage sale, or whatever, dumped it, put everything in the car, and then we drove from Cincinnati to San Francisco. My brother was in San Francisco. Drove. Wonderful drive. About 8 days. So it's a long distance actually, but it's beautiful landscape. Beautiful landscape. And I think that's life, na? So you don't know. And then we didn't have a job. I just dumped the job. Dimple finished. We just went. I think this is the sort of keeps on happening to us till we came to Bangalore. Is that we just decided, okay, chalo, next place. Let's go somewhere.
1999, you guys were at US traveling.
Yeah, we were traveling.
So, okay.
So 95, I got to Ohio. 96, Dimple came. 97, she finished. In 97, we moved to San Francisco.
Got it.
Bay Area.
Yeah.
And my brother was there, so koi to hai na, India, jaake camp in his house. And then both of us had to search for a job. And I think she got the job first. The thing is, the job situation also was very awkward. You're on like a 1 year, you can work on your student visa. So, but somebody has to sponsor the H1 after that. So nobody wants you to work only for 1 year. They want you to be there for longer.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So I applied, I remember, for about 40, 45 firms. And I got 15 people just responded. I keep telling the story. 15 people responded. I got about 5 calls. And then in that 5 calls, I got 3 interviews. I got 2 job offers. I took 1. So it was quite a tough thing. I mean, people think that, okay, getting jobs here is now tough. Young people are saying. But it's always been tough. And so the one place that I got was wonderful young, small practice called API Design. And I worked there, Dimple worked. So it's a Bay Area, right? So there's all these firms that were doing IT companies. And it so happened that after I joined, they got a call from this fledgling company called Infosys. And Infosys they were just putting their first offshore campus. They had small offices, but like a larger office. And I was luckily there. So I said, okay, fine. I didn't know much about it, but I designed Infosys' first offshore campus in, what was that area? It was Fremont. So, and Narayan Murthy came in. They may have other offices, but at least in the Bay Area, it was the first one.
So did you make the demands of how many hours of work even then?
Not yet. But
yet.
People are working hard.
Yeah.
I mean, he was happy.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I got lucky, but then it was an interior design firm. It's really not my cup of tea, actually. But I learned a lot from her, and she was not a designer. She was an entrepreneur. And she ran the office. See, in architectural practice, that is really not something you learn about in college, that, you are actually a business person. And it's important to understand that. I think you will hear this from many people. And I think we're in a current age where architects are finally realizing that you have to run things like a business, but as an ethical, practice-oriented business, right? But she ran the firm well, and I learned learned to respect the way that she ran her business. And Carol Sandman, even now, I love to be in touch with. Until last year, I was in touch because when LinkedIn wanted a factory here, office here, she reached out, but it didn't work out for us because we are not an interior design firm. Still, we do some projects, but that taught me the culture of understanding that work, design is one part of it, and how you deliver what the client wants, and the service-oriented aspect of it is another part of it. And both have to weave together, and so on and so forth. So then we were there for a while, and I jumped jobs to another firm in San Francisco. This time I thought, wow, I'm finally in an architecture firm. It's a dominantly women-owned firm, SMWM. And my office was right on the main street of San Francisco, and it was a wonderful place to work. Of course, there are always things that could have been better, but
Like? Like what? Considering you mentioned this, I'm sure something crossed your
I
mind.
think your aspirations are always there, that you want to work on these wonderful projects.
Right.
So those aspirations, like this creative pursuit of...
now that you're finally reaching an architecture firm and not an
what
interior
project I
design
worked
firm.
on? I mean, the thing is, I worked on a old building, multi-story structure, which has become in Oakland, which is on the opposite side of San Francisco, in converting... Actually, it was already a senior citizens home. And unfortunately, did not find that exciting. I'm sorry, but I should have. Ethically, it was my duty to... I did all that. But it was not exciting. I saw lectures. Charles Correa came there to Stanford and so on and so forth. And many people, I mean, wonderful lectures. There's Berkeley, there's Stanford, there's San Francisco itself has a vibrant architecture community. So you saw all these things. And then in addition to that, you saw great art, great music. But you end up doing something fairly mundane, right? It is important for the people who would inhabit that place. But as a young architect, that's not enough. You want to creative pursuit, juice nahi hai isme. So that became a wonderful place to work. I learned a lot. And then I think we decided, let's get back. How long will you work in somebody else's office? You want to be your own boss. That's ingrained, So once you work somewhere in a small practice, I don't know, it's hard to just go and work in a corporate practice and come back. So Dimple and I decided we have to come back. And she was working in Redwood City in another firm which did projects for Sun Microsystems and converting old buildings to that. And it was a wonderful time in the Bay Area because all these sort of hip offices got designed in very creative ways. New work environment.
Which year are we talking about?
This is between 97 and 2001.
उस समय क्या ट्रेंड था? फॉस्टर का तो खत्म हो गया था.
No, it was all going on that.
बहुत कुछ हो रहा था Bay Area
Time
में.
2001 and a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah. It is not that there were all kinds of offices that wanted their people to enjoy being in the office and have the freedom to work and play. So this was a concept
Google
that
and all of them
really-
were also setting up.
So work and play. So now you see Google, na?
Right.
Its legacy comes from that time.
Okay.
So Google is not like... The legacy happened when all these young people setting up, making a lot of money, thinking that I have to keep people here. How do I make sure that my staff remains with me? And so these are creative ways of holding them on. So there were some interesting offices.
You've already finished 5 years there. You're getting your hands dirty with practice as well.
Yes.
Right? Interior design to architecture has also moved. I want to know the academic that you did. I mean, academic curriculum that you did for 2 years, the masters.
Right.
How is that coming in relevant to what you're doing?
I also wanted to come to that. Between basically history and theory of architecture versus the actual practice of architecture. How much of it you actually ended up using? Because I don't know what you learned
यार उसके
there
पहले
too.
मेरा एक सवाल था, पता है क्या?
हाँ.
not everybody chooses to do what he did. How does a person choose history of architecture and delve into that? I understand that he's personally fascinated by history. Like, so am I. I mean, I'm not a history buff, but if there's a piece of history, I would like to know. Right? And I'm curious about it.
So why that particular course? Was there anything that influenced you?
Yeah, one is this, that he actually ended up doing masters. It's not an easy choice at some level. And then he's now practicing. How is that coming in relevant? Two parts
Oh,
of
yeah,
the
yeah. I've been asked this question many times. And I think it's very relevant. I'll tell you how. So, SPA was a fascinating place to be. And education, architectural education, just like maybe art education there or even the IIT, there's a sort of mixed bag of things that are thrown at you. And you grab many of those things.
Mm.
And so there would be a international dance festival, or there'll be a concert, there'll be plays, there'll be art festivals, and then there will be hajar things. I'll tell you, when I came to college, you normally, when you join the hostel, you're normally paired with the final year is paired with the fresher,
Okay.
thinking that, there will be some learning
Hmm.
and there will be also some kind of protection, right? But there's ragging also, right? All that is there. So I was paired with this wonderful guy called Keshav Gangadhar. If you've seen this movie called In Which Annie Gives Them Those Ones, you've not, you have to see it.
What is
It's
the
a
name of
brilliant movie.
In which?
In Which Annie Gives Them Those Ones. It was Arundhati Roy. She was from SPA. And if I'm right, Prakash Jha's first movie. Okay,
So
and
uncanny. Today, two people mentioned Arundhati Rai in their conversation. Like, she has never been relevant to us. But today in 4 hours. Yes, please continue.
if you see the movie, you'll understand what SPA was just before I joined. And when I was given this room, SPA had this very interesting hostel. It is an experience and it really brings you, it comes into you, that experience of being in the hostel. And it was a very free, creative space. Anyway, when I joined, I just like average guy from Gulti from Andhra, Hyderabad. And I was paired with Keshav and we had this room, there's a courtyard. I was in the terrace. And it so happened that they were shooting that movie when I had joined. And they would lock up all of us in our rooms and then shoot in the corridor. That one scene was there. So one night they were shooting just like we are shooting that whole scene. And that movie is a crazy movie about crazy people, like my roommate who was wonderfully crazy, and Candy and stuff like that. Similarly, Annie was a character in the one generation before.
Right.
And why I say they're crazy people is that they had a different sense of time and purpose, right? The hostel was home.
Hmm.
You could do anything in that hostel. So in which Annie gives them those ones. In fact, Annie, somebody else is actually growing chicken and all in the rooms. Likewise, I think here there were couples living the married life almost, and then all kinds of things. I can tell you one incident there, which is fascinating. So this movie got shot there, and then if you see the movie, you will understand the culture
Right.
that we were just. I think maybe that culture was slowly fading out,
Right.
but we were in the fag end a bit, right? And then so Keshav himself, I think, had been there about 6-7 years by the time I joined him. And he's a veteran in the hostel, and he's like he and 4 others and boss. So I got the privilege of being there. Of course, we all got ragged, just like you see in that what is that movie, 3 Idiots.
3 Idiots.
That very undies over your pants and then dance and all that happened. Actually, it's okay, it's commonplace. And then you sort of made friends with everybody, right? You got to know everybody then. So that maybe it's traumatic for many people, and I would not advise anymore going for things like that. But it was all right. All of us survived well, and we made good friends. And it was very compact, sort of intimate place to some extent.
Hmm.
You had different people you would know, and so there was this one incident I think I should tell you. It was interesting. So what happens is that Candy, his room's in the ground floor, and Candy's he's from Mauritius and he's been there for maybe 10 years now. Okay, so
Okay.
he's like been there. Everybody knows that's Candy's room, etc. A very nice chap. Likewise, there were many others who were there for 7, 6, 8 years and all that. Now, Candy, one day, he felt the need for Pondies. What are Pondies? You know Pondies?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Please continue.
So suddenly he said, "Arey yaar, Pondi kahan gaya?" So there's circulation happening in the boys' hostel. Boys' hostel actually is strange because ground floor and the top floor are boys' hostel. The two middle floors are girls' hostels. But you can't just use the staircase and go to the second floor. So you have staircase used by only the girls. One more staircase is there, the boys can use to go to the terrace. So the girls are sort of sandwiched in between. So nevertheless, we are all around the same courtyard. So Candy comes out in the courtyard and said, "Hey, kiske paas hai yaar Pondi?" So everybody said, "Oh, Vijay ke paas hai." So I said, "Okay, fine, theek hai." I said, "Okay, I'll throw it." It's okay? Ah, peko, peko. Then I threw the Pondi and all the pages came fully out. All the courtyard lying there and he's coming helping. So
I can visualize this.
So Candy got his Pondi. But anyway, that was so there were many crazy things. So I'm saying that the hostel life was sort of a, I can't tell you, it's just makes you grow up in a way that teaches you diversity and inclusivity. And now I can theorize about that, but you just lived it, na? And happily, JNU was like that. I think almost all the colleges in Delhi were at that time sort of liberal in the spirit, you know. And so we were located in ITO, and ITO is like sort of the printing press area. So many things, many activities.
Hold on, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
When this thing all, disintegrated and then there was this Pondi fall instead of rainfall, did any of them go into these two floors that had women in it?
Yeah, luckily, the chajjas were there, but the sunshades were on the other side.
Right.
And I think this side there were no chajjas, I don't recall. Because what we would do was, there's a gap between the slab and the sunshade. Right? And then there was this bamboo fence here between the railing and this. So you can't really sort of see the girls in their corridors and whatever, that was there. But then what we do, jump onto the chajja from the third floor and then from there jump into the corridor. So you had a shortcut. So the chajjas had their uses, but not on the courtyard side, on the outside side.
Right.
So you had a shortcut to do that. And then we're all friends. I mean, so like somebody's mother would come, send some sweets or something. Then somebody would say, aa jao yaar, aa gaya, sweets aa gaya. So everybody jump on the chajja, get in the girl's place and eat. Sometimes Maggie. You're not supposed to have all this equipment. Who cares, right? Even now, I think you can cook Maggie in hostels, even though they say no electrical and all. So Maggie, we'll work late. No, we're all night birds. So at 2 o'clock, somebody will cook Maggie and you'll smell it and say, hey, kaun Maggie bana raha hai yaar? Chalo. You could also go through the staircase. Nobody is stopping you. So that whole sort of freedom really tied into my value system because I grew up in a school in Hyderabad which is called Vidyaranya. So I don't know, I'm flipping here and there, but I'm telling you how it correlates to my mental, ethos. So I went to a school called Vidyaranya, and it is a school that's sort of a liberal, very liberal school. It's like part Steiner, J. Krishnamurti, mixed education.
Right.
Shanta Rameshwar Rao, who's the principal of the school, she's a children's writer, but also I think she was some royal family type thing, but she must have gotten her education somewhere. And so she said, my daughter is not finding any good school here. I'll start a school. And that's how the school started. And there would be like 20 children in every class and all that. So my parents, I don't know why they thought that school was good, but they put me in that school. And I think it is, I had a tough time getting in. My brother got in, I didn't get in first, but finally I got in. And that built up my values. Okay, the school and your parents. I mean, I am really thankful to my parents, but you built a new certain value system, right? That same value system sort of just got enhanced in SPA. I was so happy because in that school, you didn't distinguish between your girlfriends and the boyfriends, and we would just be all together. And we had this. It was actually in an old Nizam palace in the middle of Hyderabad, near Hussain Sagar, and that palace had a hillock next to it, like this rocky hills that you see in Bangalore, similar to that. And on top of the hill was Birla Mandir. So there's no boundary wall. Imagine that you have students. Obviously, you'll go in the hill, no?
Of course.
And you'll go in the hill, lunchtime, kahin baitho. And I had this crazy friend, Anand, who's become the documentary filmmaker. That crazy guy will climb on the rock face. I can't tell you, the rock face is probably as tall as this building. And he'll climb on the rock face and go. There's like a small, not even a ledge, a crack. And we'll all go another route. Of course, that's also risky. But see, the sense of the school said, okay, it's great. They let them go to nature and do what they want. And so there is a sort of a freedom that you had in that school that I felt was amazing. And I found that connection in SPA. Now things have changed. And in fact, it changed during the course of my education there itself. There was this kind of change harder towards a little more stricter kind of regime. And that's a different story.
Going back to how did you choose history?
Why history and theory?
I'm sorry I didn't address that question. But so what happens is in SPA, there is this kind of Satish Grover was our history teacher, one of our history.
Is he somebody very popular? Because the name is not unfamiliar to me. I don't have a face to the name. I don't know.
You may not know him, but he was very well-known architect, Delhi architect. I don't know if in South he was very well recognized, but Delhi architects got published, and they had the privilege of being in the cultural hub of India.
Got it.
And so he's written a couple of books on Indian architecture, and they became some kind of reference textbooks for many people. I don't know if in colleges here, but even we used to use his textbook. So he would come and he will sit. This is our lecture hall, chota lecture room. He'll come. There's a table like this. He will sit. He will take a cigarette out and go on a monologue for 45 minutes. And he's a very opinionated person, and he had great knowledge, but he would just have his critique of a particular historical place. He would talk about Chandigarh, modern, or he could talk about Ajanta Ellora. But he would have this kind of flow of speaking, and I think it was quite inspiring. Then there was this other gentleman the next semester who used to work in Satish Gujral's office. I've been trying to find his name. I'm not able to find. But he was the other kind. He will pace left to right, but he would make connections between different places and time and geography and politics. And so that also inspired me. And so rather than, for example, structures, structures was taught by some engineer, and I really failed twice, and I had to write supplementary exam. Although now I love structures, and I have sort of helped, at least in Christ, redefine how structures should be taught. So maybe I didn't like those subjects. So I got drawn to this kind of this, I don't know what to call it, a poetic enterprise of architecture, right? So, and that along with hands-on working, SP was a place you could, and there was this other wonderful person called Anil Lal, Professor Anil Lal. And he was, he loved to experiment with materials. So geodesic domes, all kinds of materials. So that was the other side of it, where the materiality and intuitive understanding, cutting edge in one sense for India at that time. It may not be, titanium panels, but it was how to build with the new materials, etc. And so he had a building center with HUDCO sponsored. So there was another thing. So I sort of got drawn to these two aspects, and history became central to my understanding, history and theory. And there was this other professor. I think SP had such great teachers. Dimple may not agree, but I had this wonderful set of teachers. And Chisti, I am Chisti. He taught us theory of design. I think only one semester, part of the class I was there. I don't know why, I don't recall much, but he would, theory of design, how he teaches, make people, like for example, go under the table and experience it and come and make a model. And so very sort of, let's say, new ways of looking at space and material. So that sort of creative pursuit. So I think so SPA had this kind of eclectic kind of people. who would teach. And Revati and Vasant Kamath, two different kinds of people, husband and wife, but doing the same practice. But Revati was radical in reading vernacular architecture, and she'd make these beautiful buildings, great sketches. Vasant Kamath was a serious, Revati was a very intense person, and he was a serious, quiet guy who was always smoking the class. He'd be in the studio and he'd critique our design. So it's just so many people and personalities. It was a world of, I would say, diversity. And then SPA being what it is, you had people from Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Kalimpong,
Right.
Nagaland, Delhi, Gujarat, everywhere people. It's just a medley of people.
Quite the boiling pot from
Yeah,
that
and
point
at
of
that
view.
time, no, it was great. It's wonderful. Now it's a lot more places that you can find people studying from all over. But at that time, these kind of places are far and few between. So that sort of drove my interest in, I would say, deeply felt interest in culture. And then we had art exhibitions and international music festival, dance festival, cultural programs. And there's near Bengali market in Mandi House area, the Sri Ram Center, the Triveni's Kala Sangam. And these were also wonderful pieces of architecture. I mean, at that time, brilliant. Those were masterpieces. I mean, so by Indian architects trying to reinterpret modernist architecture in their own way in a time when they were exploring an Indian identity, right? So then there was Charles Correa, there's Pragati Maidan. So Delhi is a place where you sort of just, you're like a sponge absorbing, and you don't really know what you're absorbing. And now I can reflect and hypothesize. But I would say that all that really changed my understanding of the world. And in that part, history and theory, including theory, became an important aspect to examine over and above the tools of practice that I was being taught. Now, tools of practice means you're being taught how to draft, building construction structure, all this, and design. Those are tools of practice. But what were the things that underlay a good practice? What was or a good human being? Those were, I think, really exposed me to those things. That's why history became critical. And I felt this when I started practicing. And Gautam was another inspiration, because Gautam Bhatia, he was a critique and very sharp and very sort of tongue-in-cheek. So you knew how to get the message across without sounding, just cynical and sort of harsh.
Very mature, no?
Very mature way of doing it, and through narrative and story making. And in a way, it was also a time when postmodernism was really, along with deconstruction, became important ideas in architectural discourse.
Right.
And although we may not have had this discourse there, postmodernism was important for those Indian architects exploring this idea that what is our identity? We have been pushed towards, our education tells you to look at the West. But many of these architects are doing something that is really searching for Indian identity. And so that really pulls you and draws you to questions. And really, we used to have long drawn discussions in our rooms on issues of identity, culture, philosophical questions. Philosophy became like a conversational thing. I think all these things really, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I discovered that I enjoyed it, right? And Pandey, Arvind Pandey, who's another hosteler, he's from Gorakhpur, and he had this Pandit, and he had this beautiful Hindi. And I came from Hyderabad, I had this terrible Hindi. And I slowly started learning. I got ragged because of my Hindi.
Sure.
Right? So Pandey would recite poems and also. And then with him, he and I used to have these great conversations, and somebody will come in, pitch in and say, oh, aisa nahi hai. Then, and it was so much fun because, you could do that only, even now you can do it, but it's not really that it's outside of your work. It is inside of your work because it's your life, right? So,
Right.
So for me, I cannot for a long time separate these ideas in my head from the work that I'm doing, right? So that carries on, and that pushed me to look at not what, anyway, I've learned all the tools of practice. Why should I go and do the same thing there? And I got interested in that magazine, and I edited some of those writings, People like Prem writing wonderful stuff about relevant topics that we would talk about. And so all this added up and said, now I need to do something more that complements my understanding of architecture, which I find there's a gap. And not with so much clarity, of course,
Right.
but some sense of this that I lack this, I want this. So I search for those programs. Not too many.
Hmm.
Well, now there are not any there, but a handful of programs. And when I applied, I found there are these courses, applied, and I wanted a scholarship. I can't go without that, no money. And my brother was already in the US. He was also studying. He was a very pauper. I think he was also started to work. So some application fee and all he gave, he helped out. I think it was about $20 or something. Big money, yeah.
Yeah. Those days, yeah.
So applied to 3-4 colleges only. I mean, now you can apply for 10 colleges and you get away with it. Your parents are, can afford it. But then 3 colleges, mil gaya. I got into.
Theory gives you tools to look at your own work and history
And
itself. Okay, just to be able to dumb things down in some sense. Let's say a 6th standard kid is listening to us, and you have to explain the same funda to that guy. Do you have an example for him?
Yeah, let's say you have some different color glasses, right?
Okay.
One glass shows you maybe bias towards certain aspects of culture. Like, for example, if it was I'm wearing the red glass tells me that there is a certain thing, connection I can make between European architecture of the past, which has been brought into a completely different context in Bangalore.
Okay.
Right? Now, why did that happen? So what that lens tells you is, these are the questions to ask, right? You first ask, who brought this here? Why did they bring this here? When did they bring it? What was happening here that made that particular style of architecture attractive to them? How did they build something which was built there? How did they build it here? So it makes you ask so many questions. Right? So what theory does is, it gives you a broad understanding that you at least make yourself aware that these are the things that you ask questions. Why, when, where, etc. But the answers, you should be able to make sense out of it. So let's say Vidhan Soda.
Right.
We have Vidhan Soda.
Right.
It is so-called Indo-Sarsanic architecture. Nobody knows about Indo-Sarsanic architecture.
Right.
Now, Indo-Sarsanic Sarsans were actually, I would say, they were the Afghan-Iran border, I think. And somebody felt that these domes and stuff like that are similar, maybe something like that. And they call this the Indo-Sarsanic style, where there's a bridge between what they are familiar as European architecture towards the Byzantines and the Indian architecture. I'm speculating. Maybe I'm wrong. I've not really examined it. I'm not so interested in that. So the Indo-Sarsanic architecture is brought and dumped in a place someone is building to show that we have a new state. Our state, Karnataka, has a new identity. This is the capital, not Mysore. And so this is the monument for democracy. Right?
And no connection between them.
But see, the irony of the whole thing. While they did that, the building is monumental. And it is quite intimidating. Actually, walk the corridors of Vidhan Soda. Earlier, you could walk into the Vidhan Soda. Now they have barricade, fence, etc. But I've been there a few times because of the work. And when you go there, you feel intimidated, right? That is what it's supposed to do. But democracy is not that, right? Democracy, philosophically, is inclusive. So this is the theoretical understanding. So philosophy connects to it, politics connects to it, social understanding. But you have to know and recognize these signals, right? So unless you are aware of those and are conscious of those, you're not going to read those things in that building. So theory helps you do that. So it's a historical building in one way. It's a very important building it's an iconic building for Bangalore. It's sort of the pride of Bangalore. But it's ironic that it's a democratic building for the Legislative Assembly, right? And its representatives. But it's It's intimidating. It's non-inclusive now. Perhaps at some point people will walk through the corridors, and that was inclusive enough. But the monumentality and opaqueness of the building using stone, it may be a local material that they use, very much a local material. So you can justify it saying that it is a local material. What's wrong with using that? But there's an opacity to that. No, opacity is not really a way that you translate the idea of democracy, accessibility, inclusiveness into a building. So it's, for me as an architect, a building is representational. Right? It's a representation of some aspirations, some principles, etc. So what should a democratic building be? I'm sorry, I'm getting into theory.
Yeah.
What's a democratic building? In my mind, I have seen a couple of buildings that are very interesting. Once in my travels through France, Dimple and I were traveling for 40 days, and we had stopped at a small town called Nîmes. Huh? Nîmes has this sort of it's an old Roman city, French Roman. And there, Norman Foster has built I think, a museum next to it, next to this old monument. And it's just glass, sort of very straight line box, very transparent, very open. And I think it was a public space, a civic building. I'm comparing legislature, Vidhan Sabha to a civic building. As a civic building, it was transparent, welcoming, and sort of light. It's not heavy. So then that became, for me, a good representation of something which is, let's say, of democratic values as a civic building. Similarly, I saw one in Sydney. Right? I'm saying outside example because we don't know. We don't do this thing. Because we don't read principles and correlate them to how we should design our architecture. So which is why, mistakenly, in my opinion, this is my critique, that Vidhan Sabha should have been a very accessible building, because our legislators, who are our representatives, who are us, are going there and they make things themselves inaccessible and in an intimidating building. So imagine a villager coming there, climb those steps. There should be no steps. You should not have to look at the building like that. It is not a monument. And a civic building in a democracy needs to be something humane, inclusive, accessible, right? In principle.
Down to earth as well.
Yeah, that is the theoretical base and critique from which I will start examining these buildings. At the same time, I'm fully aware that there's a political and historical circumstance under which this was built. And the ethos of the people who drove the agenda for this kind of building were coming from the point that, we are a developing culture. We have very lot of poor people, illiterate people. We have to govern all of these people. So we need to put in systems in place that can help them. At the same time, it is not going to happen at one-to-one equality. I mean, we have to come from a position of authority. So that describes why the building was like that.
Right.
By default, they didn't even question these values. These are democratic values, but they did not really look at democratic values. They thought we need to have a building which is a symbol. And so they kept aside the core values, but rather a symbol for which will become iconic for the legislature of Karnataka.
And they repeated
So
it.
isn't it
multiple
important to understand these things before you design architecture? That's why I feel theory is important. And it gave me the tools to look at a historical place. It's not just a building, no? It's a place. A building is physical parts. But it's there only because of the people. And so the place becomes a composite combination of people and the building. And now the place, then you have to start looking at the place. Now, if you go into Vidhan Sabha, its corridors, people can access it. But you have some privilege of access has to be there. And then all the people who are occupying it, they come from positions of authority. MLA is accessible, but not really accessible. We've made a system like that. So maybe it's an outcome of how we think. Vidhan Sabha directly an outcome of how we are. Although I might have the bias that you should have had democratic values and built it, who am I? Right? But if I do get an opportunity now, I will bring that on the table and I'll make sure the building that I pass on the message and see how that can become part of the agenda of the building.
Mm.
So is it right to say that theory helps in evolving the design?
True, it helps you ask the right questions, identify and interpret two things, two or three things. Like one is what type of building is it? Government, civic building, museum, school, whatever. It's important. What is the use? Typology of building, it makes you think critically and question it. Now, school for me, I don't know if you remember, but when I was teaching there was one exercise in the college that we took up a school. I said, don't think of it as a school. It's a cultural place to educate yourself, right? And this brief, I don't know, many students have told me it was a wonderful brief. Only because you say school typology, you know, about 10
corridor.
classrooms, corridor, dining hall, see, staircase. This is your
It's like a
imagination of
template.
school. But
Yeah.
you have to break that imagination because that's not the right school environment for most children. You're not going to pack them in a military style classroom and educate them. You want them to be free, question, understand. So where is that going to happen? So that cannot be the school. It has to be a place where you can see the landscape, you can encounter different people. I think that's a place of meeting, a place of culture. So it's a cultural place for a particular purpose. So likewise, it gives you some understanding of what is the current typology, what are the problems with it. So how do you unfold and open up a critique for that? So that is typology. Second, the site itself. The site, no, it could be hilly site, it could be urban site. Every site gives you something. So it gives you tools to understand what is the site offering you. I mean, you're going to go and put something there. If you go and put something there, you're just imposing your will onto the site. But the site is alive. Site is alive. So you can't just go and put anything there. Site tells you something. How do you have a conversation? If you don't have the tools to have a conversation, you can't do it. So theory does give you tools to have a conversation. And lastly, it's the economics, right? So economics, how does theory help in economics? It rationalizes your whole enterprise. You have to make what you want. Lofty ideas are they're great. Principles are great. But if you can't make it work within a budget, you cannot do it. So which means that these constraints will make it actually better and make it sharper. You're going to have to think on your feet, alert, and make it really work well. So that makes you rationalize it even better. So I think these three things in each of these aspects, which I feel are critical to coming up with the design and making sure that the design is built in a particular budget, in a particular process, theory helps.
So what made you come back to India? I mean, because generally somebody who goes to the US, at least from my times, after a lot of my classmates, I don't know from college, but a lot of my classmates from school who went to the US, studied there, plus a lot of the seniors who went there, they haven't come back. They went there, settled there, they're working there. So what made you come back?
So the same things that I've been speaking about, I think. So what happens is, US is a fantastic place, especially the Bay Area, San Francisco is a great place to live. There's great culture, food, mix of people. From here, you just go 10 kilometers, you're in the hills. From here, you go to the bay, the beach. So it's a great place, great friends. But then somewhere you feel that if architecture and design is culture specific, no? So I'm not from that. Even though I lived 6 years, I'm outside of it. For me to get comfortable and my being, I don't know how to explain, I'm there. Will take me 10 years. So by that time, I'll be working in some office, pigeonholed into some role. We didn't want to do that. Whereas here, looking at the growth, we are 2001. Manmohan Singh's policies and really started, flowering. And there's so much opportunity here. We said in 20 years from now, where do you want to be? In a place that you can actually reach in 20 years. It takes, your practice. We saw all our people we're working with. It takes a long time for architectural practice to establish themselves. And 20 saal baad, where will you be? 20 saal baad, you want to be here. And it's really the right decision. I may have been doing wonderfully well there, but I don't care. Now, here, I am in a place where we're doing a great amount of diverse work, intensely interesting, right? And I love it. So I remember my boss in the firm from San Francisco, Lamberto Morris. He's an Italian fellow. He must have been around 60s by the time I was leaving. He and his 3 partners were women. But he was my boss. So my boss's boss. So I said, I'm going back. He called me and said, sit down. Why are you going back? So he told me his story. Say, I'm coming from Italy. Italy is still a poor country. It's not like. So he said, see, if I was in Italy, I had to make 2 choices when I came here. In Italy, I could have been someone without any money. Right? Someone. I could reach name, fame, because I knew I was good and I could contribute to my regional design practice. But in America, you could have lots of money, but you are nobody. You have to make a choice. Do you want to be somebody without any money or nobody with lots of money? Very practical. Huh? I don't think people know me. I'm running a good practice, but I'm still a nobody with a lot of money. I made a lot of money here. So you should make the right choice for yourself. But then it was obvious. So thing is, I knew money will come. And, I come from a middle class background. My father did go to the Gulf. He was working in Abu Dhabi for 3-4 years, but he didn't like it. And he would come every 3 months. I don't know, a crazy guy. And every time he'll bring one washing machine. Once he'll bring the TV. My mother will say, why the hell are you spending all the money? And you're coming off like this and spending 15 days without pay. You better go back. But he's not. He'll keep coming. So maybe all these things didn't matter, but it didn't seem like I could stick around in the Bay Area. Wonderful place. Huh? I had great time in the US. But it seemed right to come back. No, come back. See, I don't know. I don't have any regrets.
Why Bangalore?
That's because Dimple's from Delhi and she has great family there, and business family, right? And she didn't want to go back because being a woman, you get caught up in all these family things, and there's a certain cultural.
Especially when you come from
there,
that part of the region.
She didn't want to get trapped there, right? So Delhi was a no-no. Although I love Delhi. And then Chennai, my parents had moved back to Chennai, and Chennai is now an interesting place. Lot happening, wonderful, vibrant, and great work happening there. But not at that time. 2001, it was a conservative place. People would not spend anything on anything. Architects' fees would be problematic. Then it would be between Hyderabad and Bangalore. And Hyderabad would have been a great choice also. But Bangalore, because we are from the Bay Area, the direct connection, you sense that, okay, we can get some clients because we did these kind of projects there. And so it was just greed. And I did actually, because I did Infosys work, I did contact the Infosys guy. But at that point, after the 9/11, there was a big fall, right? There was a crash. And we didn't get any work. Nothing worked out the way we thought when we came to Bangalore. But Bangalore was the place because you had the same Silicon Valley type
People.
ethos.
Ethos.
Right? Like little bit. And so the Silicon Valley type ethos, to some extent, meaning little bit, let's say, spend the money on things that will make design work for you, right? That kind of stuff. And I came here actually 1 year before met with my one college friend. He's a landscape architect, Mohan. He really helped us at that time. And Mohan's I went with him here and there, understood Bangalore, and said it seemed like a good place to be. And it was at the center of the peninsula, na? So it somehow seemed like a attractive place to be. And it was still a calm, quiet town at that time, but it was booming. And despite the crash, we decided we'll come here. And so we moved here. Not Hyderabad. Hyderabad was still nascent. Here there's already IT industry was booming, and we were in Silicon Valley, IT connection, etc. Although when we came here, we didn't get anything. The first project was a chota mota gate and garage for my uncle, one uncle I had, they're still there. I'm still nearby in Ranka Colony.
So you did SPA, which is already the top level of schools for architecture in India.
You don't know that when you're studying there, actually.
Yeah,
I still don't feel that. So although you're saying from an outside perspective, when you're studying, actually, you feel like, kya yaar, kachra hai. Not like everything.
Yeah, but
some
then
things you'll
it
say.
had a very different vibe and
It was
experience
wonderful.
and everything.
I'm contradicting. It's a paradox. While you're studying there, you're always complaining. But when I see it from now, I had a great time, great teachers. It was wonderful.
And you went to Cincinnati, did history and architecture theory masters. Did you do anything to do with urban design as well?
No.
No? So your practice is not to do with urban design right now. You're doing
It
mostly.
has a lot to do with it.
You have a lot of.
I don't know if I reflect on every 4 years, 4-5 years, something bites me. So I'm drawn to that. And urban design, everything is a different journey. You know, it starts emerging somewhere. And urban design emerged from my activism for Bangalore, and around 2007, and Bangalore was just growing, and the government had said, okay, let's widen all the roads. I said, what the hell? Yeah, such beautiful trees are being cut. So I went and joined a citizens organization called Hasiru Usuru.
Okay.
Green is life.
Yeah.
Hasiru Usuru was supported by ESG, Leo Saldana and all, but it had its own. So I went for a meeting of Hasiru Usuru, and Hasiru Usuru became like a place where I met different people, not architects. Right? You're always constantly meeting architects and people in the creative field, but these were people from everywhere having common concern, shared concern. But why are they going about this expansion of the city infrastructure ruthlessly, right? So that really, I became very active in that. So we had a lot of protests. In fact, I made plans and drawings for how a particular alternative way you could do. In fact, even Nanda Road, that is the RV road, they were going to cut 360 trees for the metro to come. And so we protested, not a single tree got cut. Okay. And Sheshadri Road, they were doing the same thing. And I gave the alternative proposal. We went and talked to the civic authorities and all that. So those things sort of turned the switch on for me about the city and understanding the city. And then I just sort of, I worked with them on activism. I was an activist for a while along with my practice. And about 4-5 years, we were all together, Das, etc. Who's a cyclist, and he runs another firm for CAD CAM. And then Vinay, who's now heading Alternative Law Forum. Many people like that. So those conversations really is my education to urban design. It doesn't come from formal education. So my perspectives are different. And I'm again, at some point, I realized that firefighting and protesting is not enough. You have to make it work for the government, and you have to handhold them and change things. So it took me into urban design. I mean, who's going to do it otherwise? Nobody's there to. If you just keep complaining, you can't do it. So Gandhi Bazaar was an outcome. Then we've done something called high density corridor. It's really not our domain. But who's designing our roads? You'll be appalled. There are well-meaning engineers, wonderful people, but I don't think they're culturally aware in a way that can come into design. They may be sensitive to this, but they don't know how to translate it into design. And so I have a wonderful set of people I work with who are engineers, but we lead the design thinking there. So design thinking in urban design, not the urban design that you're thinking, urban infrastructure is something I got drawn into. And I enjoy it. And I'm thinking now I want to do public space. So we're exploring and reaching out for projects that where we can bring design thinking into public infrastructure and public space. So we're doing something for Bangalore Airport. Because sometimes we don't get paid. We go on loss. I can sustain some other loss maybe. But as a business practice, it's a no-no. I mean, actually, we should be making profits from any project that we're doing. But that's probably not going to be possible in these projects. And BBMP is a well-meaning. We developed a manual for them. And nobody asked us for the manual of how roads should be designed. We did it. So I think it's an activism that is of a different kind where you are constructively informing and educating who They are willing to be learning and taking your input. And they want to engage with you if you engage with them. So that whole process has made me think about urban design, and we're doing a metro station, parts of it. So my goal is to figure out if design thinking in public space projects can transform the city. And I think very few people are doing this. And architects remain closed in their own domains. And although we have a wonderful architect practice, this is also one, I'll call it vertical for lack of anything, one area that I feel very committed to. So we tried this to do something in Hampi, wherever I can find, in Chennai. But it's hard to get these projects because these are closely held by certain agencies with vested interests, right? So you have to break that.
So you're definitely not a one podcast guest for us. We need to do multiple more, but in constraint of the time that we have, just want to quickly just touch upon 2-3 points that we thought we'll cover up in this episode.
I have a very important thing to ask him. I feel it's very important because, see, he does both these things, right? Practice and academics.
So I was coming to
Yeah, please
coming to exactly
take it forward. Take it forward.
So you spoke about SPA and the kind of teachers who were teaching there, who had already made a mark for themselves in the personal practice side of it, like Gautam Bhatia and Mr. Grover and all of them who taught you there. So they had already come with a certain experience in the back, having worked and learned something and then coming and teaching, plus the freedom of even teaching, if somebody is sitting in the class and smoking, having that freedom. Where did that kind of teaching method get lost over time? Because now, I don't know how things are in today's colleges, but when we were in college, and I know for some, I'm sure that it has not evolved back, but it was just gone to more stricter places. And why is education system not giving that freedom of learning to students, and why is it being made so constrained?
So I'll take you back to SPA, but a different story, not what you're talking about. See, in SPA, what happened was we had a mixed hostel, right? Then they built another hostel far away in Maharani Bagh, and they said, okay, we'll shift all the boys there, all the girls will be here. Then there was a big strike. Obviously, we don't want to be separated. We're all together.
Yeah, how will you throw books?
Huh?
How will you throw books?
That's true. But really, honestly, there was a bonded camaraderie, which I can't describe. And it was not for sex or whatever it is. That's the story everybody put, but it's not. So that we all said, we are all the same. Why we should be separated? And that will bring a separated distance. So we protested. And the protest, what I observed was, about 7 of us were about to be, what is that, 3 Idiots word? Rusticated. And so we had to go and write the letter and all. It was there. So I don't know. I get caught up in all these things somehow. But that taught me one thing. And in that time, they wrote letters to all the girl students, PG students, who were actually adults, to their parents. See, your ward is doing this. That's bullshit. That really hurt my values. So what I'm saying is, there are these aspects of your life that educate you more than the classroom sometimes. But what has happened in the education academia here, they're starting to treat their college environment as a school. And they've really curtailed it. And I had gone to Christ thinking that it's a university outside. That's another story, that's some other time. Saying that I can rework the curriculum, how architectural education is done. Because it's a very, what I studied, he must have studied, even now the same thing is happening, the structure-wise. You have to break that, right? So because then if you want people to be of this age, you have to, not only that, even my age, it would be nice to break it. Break the structure and make it integrated. So the college, Christ, the environment is very regimented. And it's very strangling for the student. And there's no freedom. And those values that I have, it's deeply embedded in me. And I could not continue there, although they gave me great freedom in reshaping the curriculum. I must say, do credit to them. And I did what I could in the 4 years that I was there. This kind of disciplinarian environment really is hurting a lot of schools. So if the kids, if for me, I traveled everywhere myself, right? So teacher will say, jaake case study karke aao. Here if say, case study maar, then Christ will bust the students to a common location, and then from there they will distribute, then they'll bus them back. I'm saying, what are you doing? And they have to be there by 7 o'clock. Otherwise, they have to answer to the security guard. Security guard asks him, where have you gone? What is this? I'm saying, so I think
But this checks and balances and all of this is happening in a lot of schools.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So it is creating a protectivist mindset, which parents are happy because they are in Jharkhand, they are in Gulf, they are in
They feel in
Kerala.
control.
They want control. But that's really the worst thing because it doesn't give you the other side of education that I'm talking about, that all that happened to me. And that is not there. If that didn't happen, then their education is going to be structured and to some extent controlled, and so you don't explore. So I think there is a flaw in the system. The flaw is not necessarily in the academic structure. It is in the way that it's managed and run.
Admin structures.
Admin structures. So I think first student learns architecture especially. I too traveled everywhere. My learning comes from the classroom and a lot of it from outside. So in Christ, we were the first people to take any students in this 20,000 population to go out to a trip to Goa and stay with the students for 3 days and come back. Unbelievable. I'm shocked. Maybe somebody, humanities has done it, but we tried exploring. Getting permissions was difficult, so we tried to. Didn't happen. But when we went, it really key learning, and absolutely key learning. You go and see, travel, you bond with each other, you measure things together, you work in teams. It's an extremely important way of learning. And that happened. And I feel that happened in spite of the system, which is sad. Overall, I think this whole education system is locked in a battle with its disciplinarian side and not letting the values of freedom and exploration really happen. So that is a terrible thing. Did I answer the question or something?
But isn't it harming the profession in so many ways, where the kind of the quality of architects who were coming out, say 40 years back when you were in college, when you came out, versus today, where they're finishing the course in such a restricted environment, there must be a world of a difference.
There is.
I want to ask the same question,
Yeah.
but in a slightly
Yeah.
different way. I want to approach it from the point of view that, see, in some sense, students stepping out of their house, they're usually coming from a safe zone. Parents protected. Everything is taken care of them. They go and throw the chaddi, somebody picks it up and washes it for them as well. They haven't figured that out also. I'm not mocking them. I'm just saying just a very protective, preserved space. When I went to college, there was no structure for me to take care of anything, right? And I had to take it up from there. And all of us learned. We learned to manage our money. We figured out udhar dena hai, udhar nahi lena hai, kisko udhar nahi dena hai, right? Kind of a thing. How do you run your khata in the pan dukan? Because that's also a monthly requirement, right? And this whole thing about figuring life out, it's a simultaneous process to academics as well.
Absolutely.
In academics also, in some sense, you're doing the same thing. You're doing wrong things under the guidance of whatever. My seniors taught me a lot because they whooped us. Like he was giving the example of you're tagged to a senior.
Yeah.
They ragged you, but they also protected you.
Same was
Right?
the case with me.
Yeah.
I also learned
So-
a lot from seniors.
So if you look at this, in some sense, there's a loose structure of protection, but this is the first time that you are trying to flutter your own little fledgling wings and trying to figure flying out, which is where I come back to your question, that the whole ecosystem function like that, because the faculty members are also parents, yeah? The faculty members, they're also parents of other kids. They would also want their kids to flourish in whatever they choose to do. Now, if you just spin the whole thing on your head and say that, no, I will control this because my clients, the students' parents feel comfortable like this, and so on and so forth. Like my college, we worked through the night. It is the night when the work happened in the studio.
Yeah.
No, 6 o'clock locked and barred. Before the jury, 1 week before the jury, it is being opened for them to finish their documentation. So, but that's what you did as a student. You studied 1 week before the exam. You never figured out how to figure your work out, also party at the same time. So, what I'm not understanding is, students are not going to push for it because they're going from one space to another space and they don't know
they
any
don't know
better.
any better.
Right? Parents will only complain or push for a certain way of administration that they are used to, right? If they feel that, hey, a certain college or a university or an institute doesn't make them feel comfortable, they're not going to send their kids there because they're paying for it, man, and it's expensive, it's not cheap. The faculty, on the other hand, actually wear two shoes. They themselves are a lot of times parents themselves, and they are also taking care of other parents' kids. And they're also representative of somebody who imparts something to these kids to grow. So they're the only intersectional,
Very true, very true.
right? So shouldn't this push of how the administration should be the mast of it, saying that the resistance to saying that, hey, don't regimentalize it. You're just taking away learning or the potential to learning come from the faculty principally.
No, but there are two different things you're talking about. The administration is different from the teaching staff, faculty. Don't confuse the two.
Correct. And no, I'm not.
The administration wants things to run a particular way,
Right.
and they really have a stranglehold. But within that framework, the faculty can operate. But there is a second thing. The administration also has a certain ideological pursuit. Meaning, not everybody, but say, let's say there is Christ, right? I can take Christ because I understand the system. So the ideological pursuit is that by discipline, you are teaching the student about life, and in a disciplined life, they will progress. Very simple.
Yeah.
Something like that. So that is also imposed. Not only the framework. Framework means you cannot work beyond 4 o'clock, 9 to 4. After everybody has to disperse, they can't work in the college. They can't hang out in the college. They can't stay in the college. Girls can have to go back. Boys can stay in the hostel. These are the rules in that Kengeri campus. I'm familiar. So I think that is one set of rules. Second is the ideological understanding that, discipline is the right way of life. Because I think Christ was a very liberal, wild place in the 80s. I have friends from Bangalore who tell me that they were studying in St. Joseph's and all. Some of them struck Christ. That Christ was a wild place. That's where you go to have fun. Then somewhere they realized that this is too much. Maybe that was the other extreme. Somebody came and changed it to this extreme. So they became very disciplinarian. So as an outcome, the faculty don't have much in Christ. And there may be other, BMS is different. I know it's different. I have a different story about BMS. But for Christ, there's not much room to maneuver. Right? But people like me who go there, somehow I landed up there by chance. And I have to somehow break away from this. I'm telling you metaphorically because of these chains. And so I did. And they allowed me. And maybe they did not like it, but they did allow me. And in the 4 years, I managed to break a lot of those norms along with a couple of other faculty who also felt that way, but would not lead it like that. So somebody had to lead it, other people. And so as such, it allowed me to not only liberalize the architectural academic environment there, but also it got infected to other places. In fact, girls are now staying in the campus when they were not allowed to. There used to be a restriction of not working in the studio. To some extent, it is broken. You can work with permission up to 9, 10, 11, maybe 10 max. And then you have trips that can go outside of campus and stay and come back. So I'm not saying these are great achievements, but that's how you learn. And once they understood that's how you learn, they did. Next thing was, how do you bring people from outside the permanent faculty and engage with the students? Because they are the ones who are going to learn. They are practicing. These people are not practicing. They can tell you the ropes of basic academia, but it's a practice-oriented learning. And so if you don't bring practitioners from other people who to teach all kinds of subjects, not just design, history. I taught history. Theory. I taught theory of design in RV at all. If they don't come and teach all this, then you're not going to learn that the world is diverse. And there's so many different ways of operating in that. And so you get more narrower in a disciplinary environment with an ideology that says that, discipline is good for you. This is how life is. You will progress. That's absolutely crap. Discipline, in fact, has to come from within. It cannot be imposed. If you have inner discipline, then you're free to do so many things. I don't know how to explain this.
Right,
It's a philosophical understanding that most people fail to understand, which is why they are having imposed discipline. So many colleges, including all those colleges which I thought much more freer, like BMS, they're also imposing now. And BMS had crazy people. So that's another story. A lot of my friends are from BMS from a period of time when nobody taught them. Hardly anybody taught them. But they're great architects now. They're doing some great work.
So we actually...
Joy is from the BMS.
Yeah, so we had this thing that, at least when I was in college, RV College, I always felt BMS had a much better...
Why?
Because they had the freedom to do so much more.
That's right.
And we had that restriction that you come in at this time, move at this time.
Isn't it obvious? So who's critiquing this? The idea is that the more the freedom, the more the learning.
Yeah.
Because you then check yourself. I have a funny story to tell. So first year, SPA, you sort of learn to drink, smoke, and do a lot of other things, right?
Yeah.
So I started drinking, and I got so drunk, I think 3-4 months down the line, that we have parties we have the hostel, and you have to walk down a side service lane and reach the next campus about half kilometer away. And the academic campus, it has an auditorium, and the party will be in the auditorium and the basketball lawns, etc. And the faculty was liberal enough to have your party, booze and all flowing, everything. So we had that. And it had just rained, and there was a puddle in the kacha basketball court. And so I got really drunk, and I had more to drink. And I remember that I just went up the stairs, and I was lying down there, vague remembrance. And finally, I came and fell into this pool of water. And that's it. Since that time, I've never got drunk to that extent. I mean, I have my drink, I enjoy it. But it's taught me one thing, that freedom, I'm sorry, it's a story non-academic, but in an academic event, it really taught me that don't make a fool of yourself. You want to enjoy. Don't get drunk and think that that's really enjoyment. That's really not. So my point here is that if you don't give them the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them, how are they going to learn? And even in the design education, if you don't offer them a wider palette to make mistakes, and then you sort of weave the story for them and bring them back to a sort of focus, how will they learn? So,
Hey, you a smoker?
No, I don't.
You drinker?
No.
Didn't go to college?
I think it's not only drinking and smoking, but it's like freedom of mind.
I think we'll have to stop it here. We will definitely have to record more with you.
Listen, next time you're coming, you tell me beforehand so that I come, I have a drink with him first. After that, you guys can join in.
Because I don't think we've even covered like 5% of anything that
the aspect that I really wanted to talk to him about was this balance between, so even academic institutions right now are saying that you become a full-time faculty. But like I have refused that myself a few years back when I was given that. If you're not allowing me practice, I don't want to be a faculty because it's a setup for redundancy.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. That's an aspect that I wanted to talk. I think principally we all understand this, but it'll be nice to have a conversation and put it out there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
So we'll discuss that because I think we are really tight on time now. So thank you so much, sir, for doing this with us on a very short notice. But it was lovely. It was absolute fun. And I am going back a little disappointed in the sense that we did not get to talk more, but definitely coming back within the next 2-3 months and recording a couple of more episodes with you.
Welcome. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, I really enjoy it because I get something from talking to people. No? And for me, there's this kind of joy of learning. I mean, and so for me, just talking to you and reflecting on things and the things that you guys mentioned, it's really that gives me that little spark of learning and keeps me going. Yeah? For me, that's my enjoyment. That's what my takeaway is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Lovely meeting you.
Great.